Okay. Welcome to day 3 and the final day. Namaste and greetings. I, Varushka Bhushan, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. The International Day of Women in Diplomacy, observed annually on June 24th and declared by the UNGA's 76th session, celebrates women's contributions to diplomacy, honoring their achievements and advocating for gender equality. Despite 16 countries adopting feminist foreign policies since 2014, true feminist principles are often diluted in practice. To mark this day, IMPRI and the Asia Foundation announced the launch of feminist foreign policy, past, present, and future, reflecting their commitment to advocacy, education, and youth empowerment. This is a 3-day immersive online certificate training symposium held between June 24th and June 26th. And this pioneering 3-day program is designed to engage the next generation of leaders into the intricate world of diplomacy and gender equality. We welcome you and thank you for joining us on this immersive journey of mutual learning. The chair for this program is Professor Vibhuti Patel, and our expert panel for the program includes Ms. Stephanie Foster, Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya, Ambassador Lata Reddy, Ms. Nandita Baruah, Dr. Shweta Singh, Professor Anuradha Chenoy, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das, and with our conveners being Ms. Nandita Baruah, Ms. Apurva Singh, Dr. Arjun Kumar, and Dr. Simi Mehta, alongside our coordinators, Mr. Satyam Tripathi, Ms. Vidita Jain, and Ms. Shweta Piddimari. Proceeding further, we welcome everyone into this transformative journey and appreciate your dedication to investing your time, energy, and commitment to gaining a more profound understanding of the crucial role and intricate details of policy and action. We will also be sharing course outlines and reading resources in your email for your perusal. And before we start today's session, I would like to state some housekeeping announcements. First, please be on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation, and we will be taking questions in the Q&A box, not in the comments. The questions should not be posted as anonymous attendees, and please ensure that your questions are precise. To start with, I would like to welcome our chair for both her opening remarks as well as her first session on women and sustainable development goals. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Varushka, for introducing the course and welcoming guests. First of all, I would like to welcome today's esteemed speakers, both Professor Anuradha Chenoy and also our today's resource persons, Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das and Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. First of all, we would like to congratulate IMPRI team and the Asia Foundation team for organizing this 3-day international online symposium on a very, very interesting topic of and also which has generated tremendous intellectual curiosity among the younger generation that shows from the level of participation we have had over last 2 days and even today. So in last 2 days, 6 speakers, they spoke, like Stephanie Foster. She spoke, gave the basic understanding of feminist foreign policy. She also introduced her book, which is a primer on feminist foreign policy. Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya, she also introduced the origin and the trajectory of the feminist foreign policy and its relationship with the international women's rights movement. And Ambassador Lata Reddy, she shared her personal experiences of 36 years as a diplomat in the area of women, peace, and security. Yesterday, on day two, we had a Ms. Nandita Baruah, who spoke on the basis of her experiences in the Asian countries on the feminist foreign policy and the post-colonial discourses around women's role in diplomacy and trade relations, whether it is a feminist trade policy, feminist development policy, and feminist foreign policy. and some of the evolving issues because of the new developments and quite disturbing developments in geopolitics. Dr. Shweta Singh, she also spoke on the ideological underpinning and which are the ideology in the political science and scientists among the strategists and diplomats, which are determining the discourses on foreign policies. And she also talked about the semantics. She went very much into why, how, and when of the feminist foreign policy and some of the biases which the northern countries have created when it comes to relationship, unequal relationship, domination, subordination relationship between North and South. The last presentation we had yesterday was by Professor Anuradha Shenoy, who spoke on women, peace and security, giving ample examples of some of the disturbing realities we have had in the 21st century, where the conflict, the territorial conflict, the condition, some of the right-wing backlash that we got, the condition in Afghanistan, Gaza, Bosnia, and several African countries, what kind of litmus test we need to have so far as the feminist credentials are concerned. What emerged as a consensus of these 6 presentations was that feminist foreign policy provides a powerful lens through which we can counter violent global systems of power, i.e., patriarchy, racism, cultural nationalism, imperialism, militarism, that leave most of the population in a perpetual state of vulnerability and despair. This is because international relations have largely been a deeply masculine field with a relative paucity of women international relation theorists and practitioners. Feminist foreign policy is of the nation state that defines its interactions with other nation states and the movements in a manner that prioritizes gender equality, enshrines human rights of women and other historically marginalized groups, and which allocates significant resources to achieve that vision and seeks through its implementation to disrupt patriarchal and male-dominated power structures across all its levers of influence, such as development assistance, trade, defense, diplomacy, and which is informed by voices of feminist activists, civil society groups, and social movements. This means a foreign policy that is not only by women or for women, but it goes further, taking a non-binary gendered lens that recognizes and seeks to correct for historically patriarchal, casteist, racist, neo-colonialist imbalances of power as they play out on the world stage. And this robust vision that came because of the 6 presentations of previous 2 days, which also made us understand, convinced us that, and the consensus that emerges is that gender parity as well as more just attempts to make women visible in international relations, since this approach fails to realize, challenge those underlying patriarchal systems that fuel violence and conflict. So it is not only sheer number and percentage of women in diplomacy, but with what vision, whether your actions, your stands are governed or guided by transnational solidarity, that is extremely important. So it is the level of influence that women can assert on the process that makes a difference, not merely their head count. So I think I think I'll start my presentation of today, which is on Sustainable Development Goal, which has been the consensus of 199 countries have agreed to promote these goals and come up with the targeted intervention. And it got more momentum and more visibility in the post-pandemic world, where the break the bias became a major slogan, and so many achievements of the 19th and 20th century that we have had got reversed as a result of this pandemic. So okay, I want to make it full screen. So this is so these are the 17 goals we have Sustainable Development Goals. And there is a twin approach. One is that targeted approach for gender equality in Sustainable Development Goal number 5. And in all 17 goals, whether it is a goal, no poverty or no hunger or good good health or availability of clean water or and clean energy or safe city, everywhere we need to integrate the Sustainable Development Goals. I just can't make it full screen. How do I do that? One slideshow. Okay. What do I do? Hello? Yeah.
It's working now.
Got it. Yeah. So these are the 17 goals. And then gender mainstreaming in all 17 goals is the mandate that we have. When it comes to goal number 1, end poverty in all forms and everywhere. So here the question of the responsibility of the North and the rich countries and also responsibility of the macroeconomic policies to reduce economic inequality, because the data which the UN has given is that nearly 100 million women and girls, they are in a extreme state of poverty. So women, even in the pyramid of poverty, women are at the bottom, and pandemic triggered loss of livelihoods, loss of loved ones has also created more numbers of women-headed households. And now we are also talking about COVID orphans and COVID widows. Then the second goal is that of end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Now here also, women, when it comes to most of the post-colonial countries, and also because of the gender norms that we have, women are the last, women are the one who will eat last, least, and leftover. So I think whenever there is a hunger, the impact of hunger is more acute on women and girls. So women are more likely to be affected by malnutrition throughout their life cycle. Collection of data at each stage is required without merely focusing on women in reproductive age, because most of the international assistance policies and also policies of the nation state focus only on women in reproductive age from 15 to 59. No, 49 rather, 49. But girls and elderly women, they are left out. Gender norms that make women eat last, least, and leftover, that also needs to be challenged, and concerted effort need to be made through communication media and through direct intervention. And what we need is a gender disaggregated data which to resonate with the difficulties of women producers to access technology, land, and credit, because you know that the most of the world's subsistence production and the products come because of women's labor, and they are the ones who don't have this access, and that is why they always perennially remain in the state of poverty and indebtedness. Now, when it comes to goal number 3, which talks about ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being of all age group. Here also, the question is of the SDG. If you see, the initial focus is mostly on reproductive health. But what we need to emphasize is the neonatal and infant mortality, adolescent health, health needs of transgender persons, mental health, access to state-sponsored insurance and also doctors, and gender gap in vaccination, and also financing for gender equality in health. So strengthening the public health system, because that has had a major blow after the structural adjustment programs were imposed in the 90s by the International Monetary Fund and World Bank on most of the poor countries, and they were forced to reduce social sector budget, and the major axe fell on publicly supported, state-supported healthcare facilities. Goal number 4 is about ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities, because now we are in the 21st century. It is declared as a knowledge economy, and you have a massive open online resources, MOOCs, and anytime, anywhere, anybody can study. So using this technology to move beyond basic literacy for women and understand complex capabilities in learning and education, including access to ICT and skill development. I think yesterday and day before yesterday, all resource persons, experts, they also said that if you want to be effective in diplomacy or in public life, and even for the livelihood necessities, ICT are extremely important. So even to harvest simple technologies for your livelihood is very important. So breaching the digital divide and is important. Vocational education and gender responsive budgeting in education has to increase, because if you see the chart, even globally, there is a massive dropout from the primary, secondary, and even higher secondary level in the post-pandemic period. It was nation states are now trying to correct the situation, but whatever we achieved due to social reform movement of the 19th century, so many Asian countries had massive drive for education, but the pandemic, it also took the wheels of history in a backward direction. So now concerted efforts have been made to see to it that all those who have been forced out, I won't call it dropped out, but those who have been forced out because of economic circumstances or absence of digital connectivity, they need to be brought back to the educational institution and educational opportunities. Now, goal 5, which is extremely important so far as gender equality is concerned and empowerment of women and girls is concerned. First of all, the acceptance that women face more barriers than men. As you can see in these two graphs, the hurdles that women face when it comes to whether to the attention from the care from the family, as Dr. Amartya Kumar talks about 7 types of inequalities that the women face, from natality to the final stage. So from womb to tomb, the discriminatory attitude of family, of society, of community, and even of the larger economy. I think we need to address that, and need for an inclusion of basic and threshold capabilities of women to understand the cultural constraints of gender and development, and confronting gender-based violence, and also ensuring women's participation in decision-making in the workforce and in the larger political processes. Goal number 6 is about ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation. In fact, the UN has declared that the third world war will be around water. There are so many water disputes between the nation states. There are water within the between the subnational between the states. Within the state also, certain areas, and especially the urban areas, they corner all the water. So women's access to clean water and sanitation needs gender segregated attention, since girls and women bear larger burden of ensuring access to water for household. If we liberate women from running around for water, they can allocate that time for their education. In fact, in the Rajaraman study shows that 6.2 years of average poor Indian woman or girl's life goes in fetching water. Currently, several parts of our country are facing tremendous water scarcity. There are several cultural and religious barriers for women to access sanitation, especially menstrual hygiene and also postpartum access. That also needs now increasingly civil society organizations and the state are focusing attention on it. And when it comes to country like in South Asia, even the caste-based exclusion is also very important reality. And it is not only in India, it is there in Bangladesh, it is there in Pakistan, it is there in Nepal also. Goal number 7 is about ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy form. There are so many data provided by the energy experts about how many people, 1.2 billion people are without access to electricity, 3 billion people are, they don't have access to clean cooking, or there are the share of final energy consumption. So renewable energy is only 16.3%. So in this kind of a scenario, it's a very important to focus our attention to clean energy, which is required for women. Why should women be using rubber and coconut shell and for fossil fuel and the kind of things which they collect from the West use it as a fuel, which also emits carbon monoxide, and it creates respiratory diseases. So ensure access to affordable, dependable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy. And efforts need to be deployed to improve access to energy services, focusing on renewable energies and reducing energy waste across all sectors and populations. Goal number 8 is about making the economic growth of nation state like sustainable, inclusive, and very sustained for a long term. There should not be volatility in the economic growth trajectory. Productive employment and decent work are extremely important. ILO in 2019 gave the covenant of decent work, which is a right-based approach, right to work, social dialogue on the labor processes and labor relations, social protection and social security for the working class, and employment creation. So economic productivity, supporting entrepreneurship, innovation, and decreasing environmental degradation through more sustained production and consumption. They are very important concerns. And the access to remunerated employment is also very important for, and especially women who get married or who have children, or people or transgender people, they are left out, and they are not given this opportunity. So concerted effort need to be made in this direction. And also we need is gender disaggregated data at multiple life cycle states. So age-wise data for a young person's middle-aged and their requirement of employment, whether it's a full-time or part-time or flexi-time, and address the issues like wage gap, because that now, if that is a problem. Like this year's Nobel Prize, Madam Professor Goldin got, is also about the wage gap, which is there in the macroeconomy. Over last 200 years, she has studied the wage gap in different countries, and every country, it is not only the problem of poor countries, but everywhere, even in the industrialized countries, wage gap, gender-based wage gap is extremely high. So we need to, the women's access and the use of formal financial instrument is also very important. The banking, why should women always just be stuck in microfinance? Why macroeconomy is totally controlled by the patriarchal interests. Formalization of informal sector registration is very important of the workers. That's what ILO has said. And after the major migration crisis, we had reverse migration during the pandemic, where government did not even have data of how many people were in the city, how many left the city, how many came back to the city. So Labor Ministry started 4 major studies, and globally also migration has now become a very important. So migration is happening due to disaster, due to wars, due to economic downturn, and there is a very important need to understand what the gendered implication of migration. Goal 9 is about build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. So R&D becomes very important. And you know that now all the higher education institutions and think tanks are focusing on ideation, innovation, and research. R&D has become a very important this thing. When it comes to rich countries, their budgetary allocation for research is very, very high, which is like one multinational company's budget for research and development is equivalent to that of a one nation state. So I think that is the level of gap. So we need to create our own intellectual property for the national for the economic development as well as human development. Goal 10 is about reduction of inequality within and among countries. And the important areas like human rights violation, access to social protection, gender, migration, remittance, and the remittances of the migrant people, I think they are very important to understand. And here, the goals on poverty or environment, food security, peace, all of them, they converge So there are so many, out of the 17 goals, there is also the need for convergence of the goals. Goal 11 talks about make the cities and human settlement inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So it is not only the question of smart city with so many technologies and flyovers and surveillance cameras, but what we need is a human development, investment in safe housing and sanitation and water supply, affordable transport, and the infrastructure of educational institutions and healthcare facilities. Goal 12 is about ensuring sustainable consumption and production pattern. I think right from the school education to environmental groups and civil society organizations are now have become conscious about sustainable consumption, whether it is a use of overconsumption or hedonism or consumerist culture. We need to combat that. And I think also the use of plastic, use of reusable. So reusable material in production, in manufacturing sector and in consumption become very important. Goal 13 is about the climate change. And climate change, you know that there is now separate dialogues happening among the nation states, and climate action, climate resilience, strengthen the resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards and natural disasters in all countries. Yesterday, Madam Nandita Baruah, she gave so many examples of how women have collectively created the climate resilient ways in several Asian countries, but still, when the climate change dialogue takes place, they are left out. So it is very important that women's leadership and women's representation and voice in climate change discourses and climate action are taken seriously, and they are ensured. Goal 14 is about conserve and sustainably use ocean, seas, marine resources for sustainable development. So women's role in blue economy, which is so vital, but it has been ignored. In fact, if you see in several Asian countries, fisher folks and women farmers have waged so many struggles, whether it is in Philippines or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or India. So this goal seeks to urgently reduce water pollution, protect marine and coastal ecosystems, regulate fishing and harvesting, where the trawlers and all multinational companies are using mechanized trawlers, which also damage a lot of fish varieties. So many of them have become extinct, and it also pollutes sea. So many times we see photographs in the newspapers about the damage it has done to marine property. So, and also fighting illegal practices in the sea, in the ocean, on the water and deep inside the water. That is very important concern. Goal 15 is about protect, restore, promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem and sustainably manage forest, combat desertification, halt and the reverse degradation, and halt biodiversity losses. This is the major nearly 42 Asian countries, the forest dwellers and the ethnic communities have highlighted this, that the kind of development trajectory we have that is causing tremendous environmental imbalance and the ecological damage. And I think if we believe in sustainable development, then we need to promote biodiversity, which is the precondition for human well-being. Goal 16 is about promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development and provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable and inclusive institutions. I think I need not say much about it because a lot has been said in the previous 2 days by the 6 experts, that how do we make our education financial inclusion, or ensure financial inclusion, promote employment, make digital connectivity, and also representation in the apex bodies of political governance, politics and governance, and also justice. There can't be peace without justice. So peace is directly linked to intertwined with justice, and the legal discrimination or the sun preference or discriminatory norms we have in several countries, they need to be addressed And the question of security is not only question of territorial security, it is also a security of within the community, within the country. So the domestic aspect, as Madam Nandita Baruah said, that foreign policy is as important as the domestic policy. So you have to take stand, you have to come up with the laws and the support system for to address domestic violence or gender-based, varied forms of gender-based violence, and the safety of community and any organized violence because of the ethnic tension or religious tension, religion-based polarization that takes place, that needs to be addressed. The last goal in sustainable development goals is strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize global partnership for sustainable development. That means all of us have to interact with us. It is not only a question of bilateral trade. We have to multilaterally. We all need to, the rich countries and poor countries within the every region, whether it's Asia, Africa, Latin America, or Europe, America, everywhere, Scandinavia, more and more partnerships and collaboration should happen. Financing for gender equality, a separate component of development financing and development partnership, which came in the Gender Equality Forum, that was also very important main agenda. Gender responsive budgeting, it is not only the question of responding to inequality, but also creating transformative impact. You use taxpayers' money in a way which results in reducing gap in 5 vital areas of education, health, employment and skill building, combating gender-based violence, and ensuring more representation and voice of women in all areas of governance. Developing countries need to support in the form of financial resources, debt relief, and also restructuring, as well as investment in local ventures. They should also benefit from the access to science and technology so that they too can experience sustainable development. And when it comes to partnership, I think partnership, the rich countries and poor countries, both of them, they are partners in development that should not remain only a platitude, but it should be put into practice. So the gender data gap is a major concern in sustainable development, because without data, we are shooting in dark. So it's a very important to provide gender inclusive and gender sensitive data sets for each and every country, and even for the global governance. Decent work and economic growth. ILO, World Bank, and nation states are providing data, and we need to come up with the more and more inclusive policies in the world of work, in agriculture as well as in manufacturing. The role of nation states in bridging the gender gap, it is not only the duty of the state or the civil society, but even the employers, the corporates, they also need to be socially responsible, and they need to allocate their funds under corporate social responsibility to attain sustainable development goals. These are the references which are all in public domain. They can be easily downloaded. And these are the documents prepared by International Labour Organization, Gender Equality Forum, UN Women, UNICEF, World Economic Forum, which they are very data driven, and even recommend robust policy alternatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, both for your introductory remarks and such a comprehensive overview of the SDGs, and sort of making it so clear that this is such a global issue and there's so much concern for it from everywhere. And with that, I would like to delve into some questions we have for you. And the first one, and this is a question that we have been receiving for the last 2 days as well, and we know that the UN has somewhat been successful in promoting the Sustainable Development Goals in schools. Where do you think concepts and conversations about feminist foreign policy can be included in education?
Yeah.
Both at a school level and both when we talk about higher education as well.
Correct. Because when we talk about sustainable development goals, it becomes a very effective entry point for bringing in the feminist foreign policy, because we have seen, like, yes, also the whole history which the Professor Shinoy told us about, right from 75 till now, is the whole efforts of transnational solidarity that is happening at a ground level. So why not to include it in the classroom discussions? And if we do it at a very young level, because I remember when we were small, we used to every day take a pledge before the school started, no, in the assembly, that I am an Indian, all Indians are my brothers and sisters. Like, so if this kind of a mindset of that we are the citizens of this planet comes, it will solve so many problems of the sectarian way of looking at the world, or looking at people on the basis of difference rather than bringing in the commonality. So I think bringing issue of feminist foreign policy, its salient features, because India and there are many Asian countries, they say we won't use that term. Okay, they want to use gender equality. So gender equality policy that can be brought in at a school level. And like refresher courses, university and MHRD, they have started. Ministry of Education has started it at a higher education level, but it should be incorporated in the school education. And textbook writers workshops, when they take, that should be one session on this also. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And another question is, how do the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, when we talk about sustainable consumption and production, tie into feminist foreign policy and foreign policy goals?
Yeah. I think first thing is that no wastage, because there are so many rich countries earlier, like they used to destroy food. Okay, they would, in Japan, when they had a quote unquote surplus uh, rice, okay, they would throw it in the sea. But now with this new consciousness of first of all environmental, that you are polluting the sea by throwing your rice in that, no, so that is the one aspect. Second aspect is that people are hungry. There's so many people in African countries where there is a food shortage. Why always talk about trade? Why not talk about aid also, no, support? So even France came up with a directive that no restaurant can destroy food. If you have leftover food, then it should be given to the community kitchens, which are there for the people to eat. So I think some of the practices which some of the nation states have come up, or the Egypt, where pita bread is distributed, it is there for free. Or several after Millennium Development Goals, so many African countries started community kitchens. Nobody would ask for Aadhaar card. Nobody would ask for any identity. You just enter the community kitchen, you get your soup and bread. So these are the kind of efforts, and it is doable. And they showed that it is doable. Hunger in Africa was addressed with such concerted effort, where the industry, community, nation states, and development assistance played very important role in dealing with hunger. In fact, so many international organizations to address hunger, they also got established. So with collaborative effort, yes, it is possible to do.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being such an eloquent chair and also such an eloquent speaker. Usually I would, of course, ask you for your remarks, but it is you who has presented. And so with that, I would like to move on to our next session. I'm honored to invite Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, a retired IFS officer, former Indian ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and Malta. Alongside that, a distinguished fellow and head of the West Asia Experts Group at Vivekananda International Foundation, and a visiting distinguished fellow at IMPRI, for his speech on feminist foreign policy amidst contemporary geopolitical turmoil. We welcome you, sir. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Vrishka. Thank you so much for the introduction and for inviting me to this extremely important discussion whose time has come. I think that there has been a lot of discussion, a lot of talk for years together about the gender sensitive foreign policy, or as they call it, feminist foreign policy. Now it's almost 10 years, and I have served in Stockholm also, Sweden, so I've seen it from uh, there itself. Many other countries, as was mentioned, have come up with some kind of policies. But I was just reading a small statistics, which is really eye-opening for everyone. And that was at the World Economic Forum in 2023 at the Davos. And it says that the study revealed that it will take about 155 years to reach gender parity in the political empowerment sub-index. And the pre-pandemic value for this 55 years was about 100 years. And post-pandemic, it went up to roughly about 132 years. Now, that's a very, very disparaging situation. And it's totally unacceptable in my view. And as Professor had just earlier, in a very big, very, very sumptuous and strong presentation, brought out nearly every single aspect, quoting those 17 SDGs. What one has read in these current ongoing conflicts that are taking place, starting with or rather you can say that 3 black swan events. Firstly was the pandemic, and the second one was the Russia-Ukraine war, which is continuing, and the third one is the Israel-Hamas war. In all these 3, what we have witnessed is the first one has taught us what is very much germane, essentially to the problems that the gender discrimination faces, and the women and children become the biggest casualties in that. And that is, for example, in the pandemic. What did the pandemic eventually focus? It affected everybody. We all know that. So I look at it that it focused on 4H, which are also very much part of these SDGs. But what are the 4H? The 4H is number one is hunger that impacted everyone globally. And then you have health, which was a very major issue for everyone. And then you have habitat, climate, which is impacting everyone. And then lastly, you need technology, that is high tech. So these 4 things are impacting everywhere. And various studies indicate, and as Professor Patel mentioned, that what is required and how it is to be done, that the SDGs have actually gone into the back burner. Nobody is bothered about it. Many countries in the global south don't have the means to deal with them. And then simultaneously, while this was going on, the impact was being still alleviated to a little bit extent and countries could move. You have this Russia-Ukraine war. And this Russia-Ukraine war is essentially focusing, in my view, on 4Fs. You have all heard about the 3Fs, which generally talked about, and that is the weaponization of food, fuel, and fertilizer by the Russians. That has impacted the global south once again, or rather whole world in a way. Then you have, but the 4th F that we tend to forget. And that 4th F is weaponization of the financial instruments. All these are having a tremendous impact. Then comes on October 7th onwards, already almost 9 months, that we saw this Israel-Hamas war. And the statistic that has come out, people may dispute that, but the statistic that come out is the large number of women and children have been killed in this war. Millions have been displaced. And many millions have already been displaced from Palestine, from Yemen, from Syria, from different places. And I have seen when I was in Jordan that what is the plight of these people, and women particularly. So we are looking at some kind of a foreign policy injection to really bring about a certain parity in the decision-making process. So it's extremely important that happens. So today when we are going through the global order that is in transition or rather disorder, we are looking at a situation how women can play a role. In the first place, I would say that it is high time now that even a UN Secretary General should be able. As we have had powerful women in the leaders around the world. In India, we had Indira Gandhi, we had Golda Meir at one time in Israel, and we had Srimao Bandaranaike in Sri Lanka. And the very first Indian woman, Hansa Mehta in the United Nations, was instrumental in changing the phraseology of all men are born equal to all humans are born equal in the Universal Declaration of Rights. Now, so they can make a difference. They have made a difference. They make a difference on a daily basis in homes, in businesses, everywhere. But if we are looking at them only being represented, 5% of the CEO globally are women. So in the decision-making process, in India, we have been talking about this representation of women in the politics, in the parliament and legislative assembly to about 33%, even though a law was passed eventually after many years, though none of the political parties appear to be very serious about it. But it has happened. But look at what has happened today. You have barely about 14% of the people, women who have come into this. So the thing is, the attitudes have yet to change. When they are in position of power, they should be able to do so in that. Now, mainstreaming, it is often agreed, of gender in foreign policy can have a global and regional impact, and of course on the country itself. Now, how do you do the respond to the discrimination and the systematic subordination, which is still very much evident on a daily basis as far as the working places are concerned? Now, we have to also create a stronger and wider network. I'm sure it has been talked about that how to do gender equality. Professor Patel has also given a lot of solutions to this. But the implementation of the solution remains a very major challenge. And there is no single institution that works on it because it depends essentially on the goodwill of the countries. And the many countries are not in a position to even implement, even if they so wish. But there are brighter examples. I went to Rwanda and I was surprised to see that nearly 60% of their ministers were young women. And they were very bright, very sharp, and they were trying to work towards that. And it was really a great sight to see them very commandingly leading this. Then in the foreign service, generally, it is also seen that the women are not being given, and there is a constant refrain and complaint on security issues and others that they are not being assigned those important duties, apparently. Now, my colleague and friend, Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das is here, and she can, and I'm sure Ambassador Retd also shared with you. I have been very fortunate to be in the foreign service and have 3 or 4 lady bosses. Many of them were wonderful women. And I think that one of the papers that the youngsters here must go through is the one which was written, and I think a paper delivered at the ICWA by Ambassador Vibhuri. And she was involved with this UN Women organization also, and she had done tremendously well for that and continues to promote the cause of women. And then, so very often a question comes that how do you create greater inclusion? Once you join foreign service, it's fine, but the process itself is. And I often go to many of these interviews for the civil services, and when you see these aspirants, the majority of them don't even prefer the foreign service. So there is something missing there that needs to be done. And I'm sure that as Ambassador Jaishankar, the foreign minister, has mentioned, that agreed that there is a necessity to look at it from the feminine foreign policy lens for all these issues. So it is very important that more and more women join. But I was very happy to see some of the statistics because in our time, there used to be very few women who were in service. And you all know, I'm sure somebody would have quoted the case of the first woman foreign service officer, Ambassador Muthamma, and the kind of problems that she went through it. But today I was reading, and in 2014, the DOPT data mentioned that there were about 31% women foreign service officers who joined. And then 2024, the figures have gone up to 40%, 23, 24, it's about 40%. That is quite an, I would say, an encouraging sign that there are as many number of women who are there. And I go sometimes to the Foreign Service Institute and interact with them. And I see that they have done tremendously well. I mean, if I were to say that the women look at issues very differently in a more constructive manner, I think it would be, you would say it's a deja vu. What are you new? Something you are telling me. But it's true. But then the challenges, look at the challenges where they are. In India, we have our own challenges, many challenges which are there. Fortunately, at the panchayat level, we have more women, sarpanches, which is a very good thing for the local governments. But they need to move up the ladder, and that is into the legislative assembly and the parliament, and they do so. At one time, I remember in the foreign office, at the first floor, which is our power corridor in the foreign office in South Block, there were 3 secretaries were women and 1 man was the secretary. That was a great sight to be there. And I'm sure Ambassador Das remembers that time also. We have had the ministers. There was Prime Minister was a lady. Then you had Foreign Minister who was also a lady. Then you had Ministers of State who would be ladies and several secretaries. Sometimes a question comes to mind that have they thought in that term, essentially whether they should be doing more to promote the cause of women within the Foreign Service to broadband. There is a tremendous change. I don't know if somebody talked about it or not, but when we had joined the service in 80s, at that time, the rules, the Foreign Service rules were quite terrible, so to say. For example, if there is a husband-wife Foreign Service officer, the wife would get 50% of the foreign allowance. All these have been done away with. The spouse, which mostly used to be the women, because there were not very many women who were married, that person will only get 1 pillow, whereas the officer will get 2 pillows. You can see how ridiculous some of these rules were. And there are many of these. Fortunately, all these have been taken away from the Foreign Service domain. So today, I feel personally, and I have not seen many of my colleagues, lady colleagues, feeling that they have been discriminated from being sent on certain duties. Of course, in certain places, somebody would say that they don't go to a security issue. My predecessor in Libya was a lady ambassador. She went through quite a difficult period and managed it very, very beautifully and in a very great, successful manner. That ridiculous time when we had the revolution and the firing and power taking place at that time when she was there. She had to leave and wind up the mission at the time, but she handled it extremely well. We had another ambassador who evacuated people from Lebanon. So they have been very much part of the overall system. That's how I have seen it and I have looked at it. Sometimes, of course, there is a little bit of a feeling that they are given more softer postings, rightly so, if it is all there. But in the international negotiations, I have seen that in the GATT negotiations and everywhere, Ambassador Meera Shankar was very much an integral part of it. So in Indian Foreign Service, personally, I have not seen, or none of my colleagues at least mentioned, that they were feeling disgruntled because of the kind of jobs were given to them. So I think that whatever they have done remarkably well. So even though institutionally you may not feel it, but sometimes, yes, sometimes it happens to be a men's club where you might feel it. I have seen it. I would not name her, but an ambassador who was there as a DCM in Moscow felt a little bit out of place because Russians, for example, this is like all men kind of a society. So they're interacting with the women officially is fine, but when you want to do diplomacy and go extra mile, it becomes a bit difficult for ladies. Likewise, in the Arab world, you will find that kind of an inherent societal limitation that one faces. So those are certain things that we need to be mindful of. Those are the local conditions in certain places. But what I feel is that where we can do much more than what we have not been able to do is possibly use our capacity building assistance that we provide to about 161 countries across continents, from Africa to Americas to Eastern Europe to Asia. That this is something that should be predicated on, in my view, on the basis that whatever assistance is going from India or being given by India should be essentially catering to the upliftment of the women in the target country. Or it should provide, maybe in the case of SDGs, from capacity building assistance, for training, for grants, for entrepreneurship, for other things. Today, digital infrastructure, India has become a master in that. So we need to work on it. Perhaps it needs to be done in a way that women feel it, that they are an integral part of it and they're benefiting from it. Because it has been often said that if you teach a man, you teach an individual. If you teach a woman, you educate the whole family. So I think that is something that has a ripple effect and will go around all over. So that is something that should be done. But on the other hand, now in this 21st century, in our neighborhood, what is happening in Afghanistan, everybody knows that the women are, once again, the Taliban's whatever philosophy, if they call it one, is to subjugate the women, not even let them educate. Then on the other side, you have hijab controversy in Iran. So these are also certain things that are creating a major problem for a mass of women folk, and that needs to be somehow addressed internationally. And today, you know that about Afghanistan. I would personally say the United States thinks that it is the champion of all these causes, but at the same time, they are the ones who signed that agreement, Doha agreement, with the Taliban, knowing too well that what kind of people they are and what kind of philosophy they adhere to. And so then you expect them to eventually change overnight is something that is not going to be done. And once again, it's a realistic assessment which is taking place, and then everybody is trying to work with them. And there is not adequate pressure on them. Even though when India was in the UN Security Council, we continued to pursue on this issue. And we even now continue to pursue with that. So I think that these are certain issues which are global in nature, which have very many problems. In India, for example, I remember when I was in Moscow, one of my young officers, she came one day crying, and she was getting married to an IS from a different back caste, I believe. Yeah. And you have something called Khap Panchayats. Can you imagine a girl being a foreign service officer? Her husband, suppose would-be husband was to be an IS officer from a different caste, and this Khap Panchayat would not allow them to get married here. I had to speak to the DG police, and finally he provided some kind of a security. They said, you know, hukka pani band and all. Now, those kind of things that if we are having in the societal mindset, so domestically also we need to change at a home level, at the society level, at the panchayat level, that what is the role the women can play. They are educated, they are able to, and women must have this kind of, in my view, a chain reaction, that each one pull up one, like that. Those kind of things that need to be done, I guess, that because see, charity always begins at home. So it would need to be done at that level, and it should be done. And I know from my house and I have two women in my house, my daughter and my wife, and both of them are the rulers of the house. So I think that that is something that needs to be uh, inculcated. Then only we can't let the 50% of the population lag behind and then expect a country to become a Viksit Bharat or whatever it is. So it is also very important that the women get their kind of thing. In the foreign service, there are possibilities, there are chances, and I'm happy to see. I mean, I was just looking for the statistics. It was not bad. But one thing is that I think that there should be some study about the women officers who have joined, whom the women ministers who have been, prime minister have been, what exactly they have done for the improvement of the lot of the women folk, whether in service, outside service, or in the society. I think that would provide a very good thing. And today, happily, we have even the air attaches, for example, are being posted in our diplomatic mission. One Wing Commander Anjali Singh in Moscow, she went there as deputy air attache, which is a very good thing. I mean, they are going everywhere. They have done what men could not have done earlier. So it is something that, secondly, one more question that dogs one's mind is that should you continue to look at it as a gender thing, or should you look at it as a foreign policy thing? Now, that is something that needs to be, I think, a general evolution of consensus within the Foreign Office needs to happen. And that's very, very important in my view. So I think I would stop at this point, and I would say that any questions, I'll be very happy to answer, because this is something that requires a whole of nation approach. It is not something that can be only assigned to a foreign ministry or an XYZ commerce ministry or industry ministry or something like that. It has to be an across the board, and must be, in my view, a little more agile in decision making, and let the women do what they want to. I always say that there was something that old saying in Upanishads that Ramante tatra devta yatra narastu pujante. The gods only live there where the women are worshipped. Don't worship them, let them be what they want to be. And that is what I guess is the most important thing. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir, for engaging with us in a way that was both informative and incredibly anecdotal. and allowed us to sort of delve into your experiences. And we will be taking questions, but before that, I would like to invite our chair for her remarks.
Thank you, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. This is third time I'm listening to you. I think your commitment to feminist advancement is very important. And you said three important things. One is that increasing participation of women, not only in diplomacy, but in all sectors of society, it's very important. Second, there is a relationship between the overall attitude towards women in the society, in the nation state, which gets reflected in the women's role in the public positions and also diplomacy. And third one you said is a capacity building. Now, at this level, what kind of capacity building work? What should be the course content of such capacity building, where more and more women feel confident that complex issues of 21st century global governance, they can feel confident that they can easily navigate those challenging positions. No? And who can do it? Should it happen at a subnational level, at a national level, at a regional level? UN should take lead.
Madam, there are a multiplicity of organizations, a plethora of organizations. But what I was referring to is from India's point of view, because India provides capacity building assistance to 161 countries under the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program. Now, I'm a votary of this idea that we should, whenever we are providing assistance to A, B, C country, it should be properly dealt with. The projects where women are going to be empowered must be given preference over other projects. And in that, of course, the implementation is generally done by the local governments or the local organizations. You know, there are many projects which we listen to, which have very multiplier impact in the society. So that brings about entrepreneurship among the women, the digitization, when they are doing management and several other areas where the training is there. So they will pull up the others and they will continue to move forward on the ladder. So this is something that we need to do. Let's say 60% of our total capacity building assistance, which runs into billions of dollars, would be catered to. If we expect UN or anybody else, UN depends on other countries. It doesn't have anything on its own. The other countries can spend billions, hundreds of billions of dollars on a war in the Russia-Ukraine war, but they will not give $100 billion for the climate fund. So this is something that we are seeing now. So I think that we, from our side, instead of telling others what to do, we could perhaps do it ourselves.
So I think mainstreaming of gender concerns at every level, no,
Yes.
Right from recruitment to expertise to curriculum to imparting knowledge and also development assistance. It has to be inbuilt. Very, very important. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. For the first question, also I know you and Ms. Riva were talking about this before, and I will have to point out that you are our first and only male panelist on this session. The question is, what role does a man have in framing feminist policy? How does a male policy framer, while making a frame for feminist policy, make sure that the voices of women and members of other marginalized communities are not getting appropriated by his own subjecthood? And what tools can said male policymaker use to avoid this misappropriation?
Well, there are two things in this. One is the policy making. Now, the foreign policy, as you know, may be a reflection of the domestic policy of the country, but it is essentially aimed at an external environment. Now, so that's the one thing. That is framed by, let's say, the Prime Minister or the government of the day. That what kind of foreign policy we are going to pursue with which country when we are talking about neighborhood first policy. That means we are giving priority on a non-reciprocal terms to our neighbors. We are providing them assistance. Now, that assistance could play the role. Now, the role in that is that we have ambassadors, say 19, 20 ambassadors who are there, lady ambassadors. But imagine the other officers. So I even once in one of the meetings I suggested, I said that there could be two things that we can do. Number one is, if possible, I'm not very much in favor of quota system, but I would say for the women, for at least 10, 15 years, we must have a 50% quota in the foreign service. Let the women be taken into the foreign service. Then they will help develop the foreign policy, which is now moving in a very different direction, actually. We'll be dealing with a tech diplomacy henceforth. It will no longer be the classical form of diplomacy that will go on. So here, the women that now we have, let us say, as I got the statistics, about 40% of women are there. But that's a significant force. Firstly, they need to be together. I mean, there's nothing to worry about. I think there is, foreign ministry is one of the few ministries in the government where the free flow of ideas is very easy and very common, and you are listened to. So it should come from there. What do you want? I mean, today, there is no discrimination in your entitlements in the foreign service. That is a fact. And that I'm sure my colleague will also mention. It used to be the worst, which I quoted, but then today there is nothing like this. So if you are interested in doing something, you do. You know, we had the UN first representative, the Ruchira Kamboj, who just recently retired. She was the first woman PR, but the first woman president was there. We had in the beginning only, we had the first ambassador to Washington was Vijayalakshmi Pandit, and the Russia also then after Dr. Radhakrishnan, she went there. So we have had this, but I think that they need to get together and not think for once whether there is required, any change is required, or the kind of policy, because they have tremendous inputs. Apart from the ambassadors, the senior level officers who are there in the ministry, they can all decide on exactly what they think is good. In my view, I cannot tell what they should be doing. It's the tools they have in hand. Everybody is equal in the service today, and so you need to contribute and ask for what can be changed. I think group can be made out of those foreign service officers, and then they should put up a paper and give it to the minister to discuss with him. And he is open to the idea, and Prime Minister is very much open to the idea. So when लड़की बचाओ, लड़की पढ़ाओ और ये सब चलेगा, तो उसको करने के लिए तो you need the participation of everyone in that. But I think that they need to take up the cudgel themselves.
Okay, thank you so much. And there are a couple questions about, we sort of spoke about how women and children usually bear the brunt, especially in areas of conflict. What is the role, say, for example, in India, of foreign policy and feminist foreign policy when engaging with countries like Afghanistan, where you sort of spoke about the position of women, or in Israel, where we now know a lot of violence in the conflict is being done against women? What is the role of foreign policy then as a country?
There are standard approaches. India, United Nations, we always keep on raising these issues in bilateral discussions. We keep on raising issues because the women and children are the casualties of any war or any conflicts. They are the first one in the line of fire in many ways. And therefore, whether it is the governments there, secondly, India provides assistance for this purpose to these countries wherever possible. But today, even for Israel, Palestine, we send the humanitarian assistance. We send the humanitarian assistance even for Afghanistan. For 20 years, India was the only country that was helping they rebuild the country in a way that they came up to this point. But then it was our American friends who gave it back on the platter to Taliban, the power in this thing, knowing too well that what kind of obnoxious philosophy they follow. So this is something that you can't do much about it at the time. But India does have a policy stand for the rights of the women, the crimes against women, and they are spoken at the highest forums everywhere where they're possible, and all assistance is rendered where it is required. But in certain places, for example, in Afghanistan or in Gaza today, if you are not in a position to provide direct assistance to women to save them from being killed or being homeless. But once they become internally displaced or externally displaced, then you provide assistance. We are the ones, when the US and others stopped funding to the UNRWA, for example, which provides all the assistance to the Palestinians, India doubled its contribution for the UNRWA, and which was again given it. So from our policy point of view, we do whatever we can do. But it's post that greater assistance is provided for their capacity building.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for such an informative talk, but also such a personal perspective and quite a unique voice over this course. We really enjoyed and are really grateful that you took out the time to talk to us and advocated for something that you believe so strongly in. And we at IMPRI hope that you continue to engage with us and collaborate with us. And with that, I would like to move on to our valedictory session. And I'm honored to invite Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das, retired IFS officer, former Secretary East for the Ministry of External Affairs, and India High Commissioner to Bangladesh for a valedictory session, as I stated. We welcome you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and good evening to everybody. Let me first start by thanking IMPRI and particularly Professor Arjun Kumar for inviting me to this session. This is an excellent initiative, and I have heard the deliberations over the last 2 days, and I must say I've really learned a lot. Being a practitioner, we are often not, we can't really keep track of what is happening in the scholarly world or in the academic world. And I personally, I found it extremely enlightening, and I learned a lot over the last 2 days when I heard all the sessions. The sessions were excellent. And we got a theoretical perspective on how feminist foreign policy discourse started, what are the historical roots of the feminist foreign policy, and today, and we also heard from Ambassador Lata Reddy, a practitioner's point of view. So it's been a fascinating session, and a few takeaways straight away that I could sort of cull out of the discussions with. The first one probably would be that, there is overall a hesitation about, the words feminist foreign policy. I think firstly, there is no, as I understand, there is no definition really in that sense, an acceptable definition, a global acceptable definition of what really feminist foreign policy means. But I think given the history of feminism, and because, feminism really in a sense is contrary to what is there, what is stable, it questions. Therefore, I think there is a straight away, the gut reaction is, to sort of not accept a concept such as that, and that is why there is a hesitation. Now, also there is the other issue, which is, how is feminist foreign policy different from gender-sensitive foreign policy? Now, these are issues, I think, which need very thorough discussion. The scholars and the academics who have been discussing these issues over the last 2 days, they have a lot of knowledge. And I'm sure some of the younger scholars would love to, discuss a little bit more on this, that, how is the theoretical, the critical aspect of, what is it that a feminist foreign policy talks about, and what is a gender sensitive foreign policy. That's why, as I think Professor Shweta Singh said yesterday, that labeling is a very important part of this. I think labeling is very important, and I would urge scholars to go a little more into detail on this. We also heard a little bit of discussion on, whether feminist foreign policy is a Western concept, a concept from the North, which, and how does the global South react to it? And what I heard is that, global South certainly has a big case to make for feminist foreign policy and gender-sensitive foreign policy. But I think, the way we look at these issues and the way typical Sweden or Norway would look at the issue is very different. So the global South's stand on feminist foreign policy would be an interesting issue, which, which is something I take away from this last 2 days of discussion, is something which we could perhaps discuss in greater detail. Now, when typically, as Anil also mentioned, when you talk about foreign policy, when you talk about security or defense policy, you think that this is a complete preserve of men. Any discussion on these issues, you see the policymakers. Nowadays, you have Instagram, you have X, you used to have Twitter. You see a photograph, you'll rarely see a woman in a all male. So it's that's how it is. The realm of foreign policy somehow remains something that men decide, though they decide for both men and women. Women are, after all, 50% of the global population. So I think in terms of how we look at gender sensitive foreign policy from a very Indian perspective, there are two aspects to it, as I see it. One aspect is having more women in decision-making positions. And the second aspect is having a feminine aspect or a gender aspect, gender sensitivity to foreign policy. Now, when you come to the question of having women's representation in foreign offices, we find that some foreign offices globally do very well. We are a very small foreign service. We are just about a little more than 800 strong. And it is very heartening that from 2014 to 2022, there has been a 6.6% increase in the number of women that have been inducted into the service. So from 31.2% in 2014, there are now 37.8% women in service. When I joined service, we were a batch of 12. We had 3 women. That's it. So this is far from parity. This is not parity at all. This is far from parity. And while the increase is something which should be happy about, we should also, there is a Ambassador Trigunayat mentioned about it, that, there are very few women who actually apply for the foreign service. There is a huge hesitation in applying for the foreign service because a lot of women feel that it is too hard, it is too challenging. And I have at many other public forums said that it is no more challenging than any other job. Any job that a woman does is challenging. Women have to take on so many responsibilities that whether you're a teacher, whether you're a professor, whether you're in the administrative services, you're in the revenue services or in the foreign service, the only additional challenge of foreign service is that you are moving from one country to another. But your training and your instincts as you grow in the job teach you how to deal with that. You may find yourself in a completely alien country with a kid or 2 kids and, with very little support. But you manage. I mean, I think, we all manage in these situations. So it is challenging, but I would, I know a lot of youngsters must be tuned into this session, that please do seriously look at the foreign service as a career option. Now, when you talk about foreign policy, besides the professional diplomat, like I was till I retired, there are also other stakeholders, which is, the scholars, academics who spend a lifetime on working on foreign policy. There are correspondents. Ambassador Retd mentioned about, how the bulk of top foreign policy correspondents in India are actually women. It's very interesting. Then the think tank community. If you go to any think tank event, you will find that there are plenty of very smart young women who are, who have very, very professional. They are so, they're so articulate in the way they talk. But there is, I think there is hardly any think tank which is headed by a woman. There is no representation of women in the, decision-making of think tank community. So, so all taken together, if you look at all the stakeholders, the representation of women in this whole stakeholder ecosystem also has to increase. Coming now to actual foreign policy issues and gender sensitivity in foreign policy issues. Now, there is, foreign policy of a country is determined at the end of the day, and to put it in very simple terms, by national interest. It's your national interest which guides the way you design your foreign policy, the way you execute it. Now, when it comes to national interest, if you are in a decision-making position, you are a woman, and you have to take a policy decision on a national security or a national interest issue, I think you will be guided only and only by your country's national interest. Nothing else will come in that frame. So I think that's a realistic position we have to accept, that if this is very theoretical, if you have to take a decision to go to war, you have to go to war, realizing fully well that this will disproportionately impact a lot of women because it is in your national interest. So these are some theoretical things which we have to understand very well. It is also often said that women, are given soft postings, and they are typically made to do the softer jobs, and the harder jobs are done by the men. This stereotyping is very typical everywhere. In fact, I often find that our male colleagues will pick up on the junior most female colleague and say, she will do the announcements. I have always opposed this because, it's not the duty of a woman officer to be forever the MC of an event. It will never occur to a man to call upon another junior young man to do the MC. Why are these roles only for women? So we know how to fight for what we think we are capable of. And I think the ministry, I have never ever felt in the ministry that, for any particular job, I have been overlooked because I was a woman. I have done something, a couple of from my personal experience, I've done some very tough jobs. I've been passport officer in Jaipur. I don't belong to Rajasthan. I went and learned the culture of the state. I learned everything. I had to deal with the police on a daily basis. I had to deal with intelligence. I had to deal with the CBI, the anti-corruption, the courts. Every other day there was a court order. So I had to deal with a lot of, and the corrupt, extremely corrupt, middlemen, dalals, as we call them, people who sit around passport offices trying to take money from, people who come from rural areas and fool them into believing that, if you pay extra amount, your job gets done. So I was able to, within a few months, I was able to clean up my office completely, and for which I got a lot of threats. People threatened me, and my staff used to say that, ma'am, please don't do this. I mean, these are, the dalals and all, they can do anything to do you. You don't know the city so well, but I was young. I had just done a few years in the service, and it gave me great satisfaction that, by the time I left Jaipur Passport Office, it was one of the cleanest office we had. Passports were issued very fast, and I was able to completely get rid of middlemen. I got people arrested from the office building itself for forgery, for cases like that. So, it's not as if we can't do tough jobs. When we are given the job, we are able to do it. I was also in fact, Anil was there with me, if you recall, in the consular passport visa division, where we used to deal with, the passport applications of the mafia, and which I used to personally deal with. And it was, quite tough. It was really very tough handling the, various passport cases of, the Mumbai mafia. And when you do your postings, also you get challenges, extreme challenges of evacuating Indians in case of difficult situations, getting Indians out of jail when they have been, put in jail for wrong reasons. I've dealt with very challenging cases of Indians getting kidnapped in China, having to deal with a very obscure judicial system, which is not at all transparent. So all in all, I think, everybody, every woman who joins the service joins with her eyes open and knows that the challenges that are there, especially when you're in a field posting, which means when you're doing a posting abroad, it means that not only do you deal with your work, day-to-day work, you also have to deal with, entertaining at home, which is very much a part of our job, our work. You have to look after your home, your house has to run. And please remember, it's not India that, you can phone here, you can phone there, you can get everything done. Maybe you're in a country where nobody speaks English. So, the challenges become that much more difficult. And your family, it's very hard on the family. I remember once when I was the alternate permanent representative to OPCW, I was doing the chemical weapons negotiations. We were doing the second review of the Chemical Weapons Convention, and we used to have very long negotiating hours. So one day I went to office in the morning. I didn't come till the night. I came back home the next day at 6 o'clock in the morning. And when I was approaching the house, I saw all lights in the house were on. So I went in and I asked my kids, I said, what happened to you? Why did you have all the lights on? They said, in case you forget where we live, because we haven't seen you in 24 hours. So it was funny, but, I could see how, kids feel. They were alone in the house. So, we are capable of handling challenges, and challenges have come our way. And I think most women officers have done very well. One final point, which is what Nandita Baruah mentioned yesterday about the link between foreign policy and domestic policy. So, domestically, and also I think underlying all of that is the issue of the overall issue of patriarchy, the attitudes. That is why before the discussion began, I said you need to have more men in the discussion, because unless you are able to make men understand that this is an issue which concerns us, this is an issue which they need to look at, and this is an issue which society needs to seriously look at, because we are far from, getting anywhere near equality. People who are on this platform, we are all awfully privileged. We are very privileged. We come from very privileged sections of society where I guess nobody told us not to study. Nobody ever told us that you have to get married at the age of 18. But, bulk of India bulk of women in India go through these issues. And despite all the effort of the government, there is our gender gap, which I heard in your platform yesterday, is we are so low in gender gap. We are 5th in South Asia. And it is, we are not doing well here at all. We are not doing well in women's participation in labor force, and which is what is, increasing women's participation in labor force is absolutely essential for us to achieve the growth rates that we want to achieve. So the society has to get there where women's concerns are mainstreamed. Women, in every sector of society, women get, their concerns are heard. I think at the present moment, we should look at being heard at all in the first place, and then we will probably come to actual action being taken to remove some of the inequalities that women still have. So in the so I feel that overall discussions such as this are very useful. UNGA's own decision to celebrate 24th June as Women in Diplomacy Day, the WPS agenda, etc., are extremely important in raising awareness globally as well as domestically for us on the contribution that women have so far made to foreign policy, as well as that they are capable of making, and the opportunities that should be given to them in future. So I would like to add one point which I forgot, which is technology and AI. Now, this is the new thing which is which we cannot avoid now. Artificial intelligence is part of our life. and use of technology. So I think, when we talk about Chat GPT, say for instance, Chat GPT depends upon the cumulative memory of years, uh, uh, in terms of for whatever you ask ChatGPT to do. But this cumulative memory is totally, is totally biased against women. It reflects a patriarchal mindset. So as far as artificial intelligence is concerned, I think women in policymaking positions as well as men in policymaking positions should be very aware and very, very conscious of what exactly we are in for and how does this impact women. Does it impact women adversely? I wouldn't say I'm an expert on any of this, but my little understanding tells me that we have to be very cautious, as I think, stereotyping of women, reinforcement of patriarchy is quite possible with more and more use of artificial intelligence, especially, programs like ChatGPT, etc. So finally, thank you, IMPRI, once again for giving me this opportunity and allowing me to share some of my thoughts as well as my experiences with this wonderful group of people. I know about 600 people have joined in and more are probably watching on YouTube. And thank you very much. And may this discussion continue. I think it's a very important discussion. And for us in India, I think it's more so because, they're cutting across sectors, as Professor Vibhuti Patel mentioned in her presentation today. We need to do a lot more work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a wonderful overview of what we've been discussing and also such a nuanced perspective. The questions, I will be taking questions. They're open on the Q&A box, but before that, closing remarks by Professor Vibhuti Patel.
Yeah, I think both the presentations today by Ambassador Anil Trigunayat and Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das give us a hope, and a lot of optimism is generated among the participants. One can see it in the response that we have received. So the important thing that emerges from this all these 3 days is that first instance of feminist foreign policy was recorded when Dr. Hansa Mehta, as an Indian delegate to United Nations Human Rights Commission, as I think several speakers talked about it today, Ambassador Trigunayat, he also spoke about it, that Dr. Hansa Mehta courageously convinced the world leaders to make amendments to Article 1 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. From all men are born free to and equal to all human beings are born free and equal. So we have a very glorious legacy of women diplomats and even men. The whole lessons of 19th century social reform movement show that how committed men have also contributed greatly, in fact, to the empowerment of women. But that another important concern that emerges from this discourse is that there cannot be peace without economic justice, social justice, environmental justice, gender justice, and distributive justice. So eloquently told by the organizers themselves, both Dr. Simi and Madam Baruah. In the current context of post-pandemic scenario, feminist foreign policy aims at transnational solidarity to fight against gender-based violence, trafficking of women and children, barbaric behavior of the nation state with the migrants and political refugees, promoting education of women and girls and men and boys by reducing digital divide, ensuring economic emancipation of women across the world, and endorsing women's leadership in politics and decision-making, and involving women in peace negotiations and treaties. India gained historic accomplishment with inclusion as a non-permanent member of United Nations Security Council on 18th June 2020. Following that, India became a member of a highly esteemed UN Commission ECOSOC status of women in September 2020. India committed to pay attention to its efforts on peacekeeping, peace building, and women's inclusion. And in August 2021, India assumed a month-long UNSC presidency where it ended with its first resolution being passed on Afghanistan situation, demanding that territory not be used for training terrorists. So India's diplomatic framework has embraced tools for soft power. And in this context, a feminist foreign policy would give India a chance to create a favorable surrounding for peace, remove domestic barriers against women, and also help in building strong bilateral and multilateral partnerships with several Asian and African countries, which is happening, which has started also. The most important, and also the vaccine diplomacy, I think, as it was highly praised by world community at the time of pandemic. The most important challenge for India is to adopt transformative policies for gender equality to improve indicators and indexes that are curated to assess development of countries' gender gaps, such as Global Gender Gap Index and Gender Inequality Index, and by removing prevailing gender stereotypes and barriers that restrict participation of women and other communities that are intersectionally marginalized. I think all Asian countries would provide provide a glorious example of gender inclusivity in the policy. Domestic policies need to have gendered lens that can protect the marginalized. I think all speakers are unanimous in their message. Without having a balanced internally, feminist foreign policy will not sustain. So contemporary world's record on women's rights, or rather women's oppression, makes it far-fetched to quickly and successfully take up the agenda of feminist foreign policy and also the structure and the vision of feminist foreign policy. Feminist foreign policy approach help all nation states in cultivating creative ways of reasoning to include climate change, global migration, gender-based violence in the agenda of security. So we don't see security in a narrow sense of a territorial, in the context of territorial conflict, no? Work with civil society organizations. So the bottom-up approach, as Madam Baruah also told us and emphasized it again in her presentation, and develop strong multilateral partnership. There are more women joining Indian Foreign Service, and in several Asian countries also, when we see so many women who are very vocal and vociferous in foreign services, as well as in so many peace negotiations. For example, Irene Santiago, in so many islands of Philippines, she has played very important role to stop ethnic tensions and also the tensions between territorial armies of those islands. No, so the thought that women can't handle challenging issues must change. And I think more research, more documentation, and more visibility needs to be given to such efforts which are made by women over the last 50 years. Feminist foreign policy would provide equal opportunity and basic human rights to women and girls and other marginalized communities. And that's why FFP will aid nations, multilateral alliances, bilateral alliances, as well as the attainment of greater status within the world community. And that is why I think if feminist foreign policy is to succeed, the countries must first establish gender equality within the border. So the domestic policy and the foreign policy, they should be in harmony with each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We did have a little bit of a technical issue with Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das. I think she is available. She's talking to us through the phone.
Yes.
So I would still like to raise the two questions, but thank you so much for your ending remarks, ma'am. And for Ambassador Das, since you gave such a wonderful overview, I would like to ask two questions that are a bit more general and themes that we've seen evolve. The first one being, what is next for feminist foreign policy? Because as we know, foreign policy challenges are evolving. When we talk about displacement or climate change, what is next for foreign policy and specifically for feminist foreign policy when we address these challenges?
I wonder if I'm audible to all of you.
Yes, you are
Yes.
audible. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if I have understood correctly, you're saying that what is the next foreign policy challenge, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So from all perspectives, if you look at, we are going through a very globally challenging period here in terms of, how the world is changing. World is changing faster than, we can analyze the effect. So from new concepts like Indo-Pacific to, the challenge of climate change, more and more disaster. So altogether, I think it's becoming a much more difficult world, a world where the earlier easily recognizable alliances are no longer there. This is also a year which has seen a large number of elections, and some more significant elections are to come. So I think in a world which is changing so rapidly, where global alignments are changing so rapidly, and where there is, big power contestation is such an important part of what we are doing, it's more and more important to have a sharper look at how women get disproportionately impacted by all of this. So I think feminists look at feminist foreign policy or gender specific or gender sensitive foreign policy is something which is really important at this stage, especially if we look at climate change and disaster, and plus the health challenges. I mean, we can't really say COVID is behind us, but we never know what new challenge can come our way. So, while the world knows how to deal with conflict and conflict resolution, but the new challenges that the world deals with, I think those are aspects which we need to deal with. And here, here a gender sensitive foreign policy becomes very important.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. And another question, and we asked a similar question to Ambassador Lata Reddy. Often when we have female IFS officers on, people are really curious about the personal challenges they faced, especially coming from the context of India, what family life looks like when you're working. I know you've touched upon this already, but people are really curious about specific challenges that you had to overcome or you learned from.
Challenges are there because I joined this. There must have been because speaking from say, let's start with Ambassador Muttama. That's where she really paved the way for us, and after that, several very senior foreign service officers like Nirupama Rao, Meera Shankar, etc., have held very senior positions, and they for us, the younger people, join a system which was much more equitable, and where the obvious discrimination that somebody like Ms. Muttama had to face was not there. But then, you get posted in different geographies, and there are geographies where there aren't too many women in who are in senior positions in the government, where you have to basically deal with men, and having a group of men look through you and not even see you. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that happens often. But I have seen everywhere that if you are a professional, if you're a true professional, within a very short time, the country you're dealing with, the officers you're dealing with, they understand that for XYZ subject, they have to deal with you. There is no other alternative. They are not going to find a man, or they cannot search for a man to deal with that subject. So I think everybody falls in place. People deal with you. It is difficult sometimes for women to, do networking to the extent to which men are free to do. But that's something which is part and parcel of a diplomat's life. You have to have contacts. You have to know people. You have to use the softer touch to get access to senior positions in your host country's government. So it's actually a mixed bag. While it is a challenge, but it's also, in many places, being a woman makes it much more easier for you. So I would say that there have been personal challenges. I mentioned about being a passport officer and then having to deal with the gangsters, passport applications of the gangsters, which is not the most pleasant experience, and negotiating a very strictly male-dominated subject like chemical weapons, and doing these 24/7 negotiations. There have been many cases where I have actually done all-night negotiations, reached home next morning, taken a shower, had breakfast within 3-4 hours, gone back again for a similar grueling session of 14-hour, 18-hour negotiations. In the UN, you do that. That's how the system works. But that's a challenge we all accept, men, women, all of us, and we deal with it. So I think it's a very, very challenging job being a woman diplomat. But flying the Indian flag is really a proud thing to do, and I would be sorry if I get a chance.
Thank you so much,
You
ma'am.
don't make only, you don't make coffee and sandwiches, you make policies. And you make them. So, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for engaging with us once again. What a wonderfully personal touch to this conversation. And we really appreciate you taking out your time and coming and speaking with us. And we at IMPRI hope to continue to hear from you. And we hope you enjoyed the discussion as well.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry power went off and it's still not come, so I will not be able to join back.
Yeah, I understand.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Excellent.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Excellent.
Before we go into our closing remarks, we will have a little bit of a feedback session. In light of time, we're only going to call on maybe 3 people, but if you would like to give us feedback, please raise your hand and our team will unmute you so that you can talk to us.
Fine.
Okay, we have a couple people with us. Does Sabah want to unmute herself and speak?
Hi everyone, this is Kamakshi. Firstly, I'd like to thank to IMPRI that it has been such an insightful session, and it actually gave me a lot of insights about diplomacy and policy making, especially from the perspective of women in all these making. And I think as a learner, it was an insightful session, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Anyone can go next.
Hi, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes.
So I'm really grateful to be a part of this session hosted by and organized by IMPRI as well as the Asia Foundation. I joined in, I just got to know like a day before it was about to start, but I'm so glad that I registered myself to be a part of this seminar, and it was absolutely an amazing opportunity to learn so much from all of these absolutely well-learned, experienced, prestigious scholars who were invited, and as we were able to also listen to experiences by, we say, it was Riva ma'am and it was Anil sir. It was absolutely an amazing opportunity, and I'm so glad I was able to connect with. Being an aspirant, like I would want to go for the foreign services myself. So I am extremely excited to able to attend more such events organized by IMPRI. And I would say personally, it was an absolutely amazing experience. And I would definitely recommend people in my circle to connect with such amazing events hosted by IMPRI. Thank you so much for this experience.
Thank you, Khushi. I'd
Shubha,
love-
Dr. This one is also there, Meenakshi Gopinath, no?
Yeah. Does
Yeah.
Miss Meenakshi want to talk to us?
Yeah, she has, I think.
Hello.
Wait.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you, Doctor.
Well, first of all, heartiest congratulations. You've got together such an amazing galaxy across the entire foreign policy spectrum, including a whole band of stakeholders. And I just want to congratulate you and congratulate IMPRI and the Asia Society, and of course, Professor Vibhuti Patel, who has curated this with so much sensitivity. Having said that, I'm particularly delighted that Ambassador Trigunayat is there, and that we are not doing womenels at the manels to counter the manels that we have all been subjected to. And thank you, sir, for your amazing insight. I just had a couple of say maybe observations, if I may. I think my own preference, as I've shared earlier, is to talk about a gender-sensitive approach to foreign policy. Just like you can have a gender-sensitive approach to agriculture, you can have a gender-sensitive approach to the economy, and so on across the board. FFP in particular as a designation, I think provided the global north with a soft landing into 1325. Now, the global south didn't need that because we are already such a rich laboratory of both intersectionality, of the kinds of conflicts, of intra-state difficulties, and so on and so forth. Cartographic anxieties, as Shweta mentioned so evocatively yesterday. But I think it's important to ask who today, in the context of the changing contours of geopolitics and diplomacy, who is a diplomat today? Who is doing diplomacy? Is it only the men and women who sit in South Block and in different embassies? Or is a whole spectrum of people who are engaged in track 1.5, maybe track 2, track 3, people-to-people diplomacy, and the 8 tracks, multi-track diplomacy that became so popular because Ambassador MacDonald and Diamond's, perspectives. Having said that, I would also like to say that we from the Global South are not looking for a sanitized approach to 1325, not a top-down, not a state-centric. The whole idea of a gender-sensitive foreign policy comes together at a very crucial moment in the evolution of the understanding of security itself. Earlier on, foreign policy establishments were deeply tied to defense strategy and its protection and preservation and its dissemination in some ways. Peace departments were located in where peace was taught in departments that taught war, and rather than in peace departments per se. But there's been a long evolution, and ever since the concept of human security entered the frame, and as Vibhuti, you mentioned, the Sustainable Development Goals, which in a sense was a great triumph of transnational feminist innovations across the globe, encapsulated in this, the worlds of security and the worlds of development have come together. And that is where I think feminist foreign policy gets its shall I say, resonance and is able to grow with each passing day. Having said that, I do want to once again congratulate Anu Chinoy for having pointed us in the direction of looking at the difference between a diplomat and a person who does foreign policy. A traditional diplomat and a person who does foreign policy outside of the haloed spheres of the foreign policy establishment. A kind of decentering, a decentralization, engaging in perhaps anti-war campaigns, anti-nuclear campaigns, feeding into the discourse that the foreign policy formal establishments can actually pick up as resonance as they negotiate or mediate at the high tables where policies are made, whether it's climate change and so on. I think from the grassroots, the subaltern voices need to enter the smoke-filled rooms of mostly suited men in black suits. Peacekeeping, again, there's a very interesting argument that's going on today, or shall I say a discussion, on how can you infuse peacekeeping with the ethics of care, which is so much of feminist, shall I say, a part of the feminist discourse. Now, peacekeeping typically used to be a blue helmet operation, but it has now evolved in so many ways, and our own role in peacekeeping, India's own role of women engaged in peacekeeping is well known. I don't really have to go there. But have we, by winning the personal war battle, have we lost the social war? That is a big issue that we have to confront. And I think Riva's very, very interesting insights on AI is something we need to. But thank you ever so much. I've learned so much from this very enlightening discussion. Thank you, IMPRI, and thank you, VIBHUTI, and thank you, Asia Society. Thank you ever so much.
Yeah, humble. Yeah, humble when actually it comes from you. It really gives us great moral boost. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gopinath. It's wonderful to see that academics like you are also having the opportunity to listen in to us. And thank you for joining us over the course of this conversation.
My privilege, my privilege.
Can we hear from before?
Hello.
Sorry, before we take more feedback, we'd love if you could introduce yourself.
Audible? My name is Umar.
Hello.
I think Mr. Chukuma was the first
Yes,
one.
Umeji, go.
Yes,
go.
Chukuma.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Chukumaji, go ahead.
Okay, I am Chukuma Onyekwelu.
From which
I'm
country?
a legal practitioner from Nigeria.
Yeah.
So it has been a wonderful experience for me for the past three days, listening and focusing on the topic, feminist foreign policy. I've not actually had time to pay attention to the concept of feminism. Over the past 10 years, people have been talking about it, but having the opportunity of this nature, I paid attention, and I'm delighted that there are women who are out and ready to champion their cause in a positive way, educating people to understand their side of the global issues. So it's a wonderful thing. I particularly wanted to talk because of the country from where I'm coming. India has a negative image in Nigeria. And such opportunity you provided has clarified a lot of things for me. And coming from women and having support from men as well, I think I'll give you kudos and ask you to keep it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for boosting our morale. Thank you, Mr. Chukuma.
And next we can go to Ume.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. This is Ume Parwa, the postgraduate scholar from Pakistan. Thank you for giving us opportunity to join this insightful session on gender equality, especially with reference to foreign policy. I would like to highlight that the media can be a powerful tool to change the cultural aspect of people to accept the concept of gender equality, because culture has the highest influence in Pakistan as well as India or the global south over the mindset of the peoples. So I think the role of media will be powerful enough for peoples to change their mindset slowly and gradually.
Right, you are right. And that's why whether it is a mainstream media or social media. I think we need to access all media for taking our message ahead. Thank you.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes.
Namaste, I am Preeti Panwar. I am assistant professor in Miranda House, University of Delhi. Thank you for such a insightful session, ma'am. And all the important aspects were covered. I'm very happy for that. And especially Vibhuti Patel, ma'am, she covered the education part also, because I'm more concerned with the education. I have worked in school also, in government school, in private school also. And basically what we think that the change we want, it starts from the school itself. That's why I was more concerned that how can we inculcate that feminist perspective, FP, what we are talking about, how can we inculcate in school curriculum? That was my question that was answered by Vibhuti ma'am. Thank you for that. And because education is an important tool, what we consider for a social change, and school is a miniature of society. So thank you for such insightful sessions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Tiyasha Mishra. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I'm Tiyasha Mishra. I'm working on industries and sustainable development as research scholar. So thanks to IMPRI for organizing such beautiful talk series on feminist foreign policy in these 3 days. I got to learn a lot, and I hope to attend more such talks in future, and hope that this will be with me and this will help me in my further research. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Hello, I am Faisal and I am a research scholar at JMI. And this three-day session has highlighted various issues like the vast perspective that the feminist foreign policy holds, from being linked to the first foreign mistress of Sweden, that Margot Wallström has introduced these policies in Sweden, to knowing about different things like the different issues that has been highlighted and the mass murders that were done in Bangladesh, to the different issues like educating a woman is like educating a whole house. So these sessions have really heightened and actually taken the comprehensive approach that is really needed in this today's world, in which the far right governments are taking over, and what this new feminist foreign policy holds for the future in the coming generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jamila Khaymer from Bahrain. I would like to thank you for organizing such a very interesting and informative feminist foreign policy webinar. I have enjoyed it over 3 days. However, I would love to see more international speaker because they bring this different perspective. As you know, the Middle East has the most challenges, political challenges, and it's very important to inform the people here. Yes, the culture, the religion, the social norms are different from everywhere, yet we lack the knowledge regarding a gender perspective. Let me say here, it's not accepted to say feminist. However, gender perspective is very important. Although the governments really provide empowerment for women, yet even women are not empowering women. So we need really to work on the gender perspective and to develop policies, especially the foreign policy. Thank you. It was interesting days.
Yeah. Please make an announcement that the feedback form is already shared on the chat box. Please see it. It was shared at 5:06 p.m.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jamila. Anyone else that would like to share their thoughts?
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I'm Kritika Kaushik, and I'm a PhD scholar from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. So this was a very great and nice 3-day simulation of the feminist foreign policy, and I have 3 important key takeaways from this training program. Firstly, it is very important that we hold such initiatives, and thanks to IMPRI and Asia Foundation, because a lot of myths were debunked about feminist foreign policy, and it is more inclusive than what I had initially thought about. Apart from that, the fact that feminist foreign policy is not an exclusive domain of the global north, but it is very much applicable to the global south. This idea was also very interesting, and more research can be done upon this by future scholars as well. So this was a very great simulation for me and a learning experience, because both theory and practice were combined by giving such nice theoretical foundations about the whole idea of feminist foreign policy, and giving practical insights from bringing in foreign policy practitioners. So thanks a lot for this simulation. I congratulate both IMPRI and Asia Foundation for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for talking to us. Anyone else? We have Sabha, Ashish Gupta, Shweta Notane. Anyone that wants to contribute?
Everyone, I'm Raj Nandini. I hope I'm audible. I would like to thank IMPRI for this great opportunity. It has been a great experience for me, like from the day one. And the most important thing I really liked about this journey is that there was this combination of theory as well as the pragmatic side. So I could relate what I was learning in the theory with the help of all those practitioners, all those ambassadors, and that was really a great experience. Thank you so much.
Rajnandini, where are you from?
I'm from Pune. I'm just studying political science from Ferguson College.
Thank you.
Namaste everyone. My name is Anuja Survase. I am from Pune, and I am second year in pursuing second year graduation in political science. And this session was very useful for my academics and very insightful for me. So thank you so much, and looking forward to such sessions in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Srishti Stuti Roy. I'm a postgraduate student at the moment. I'm pursuing my studies in gender studies, and my graduation was in political science from Jadavpur University. So I think the key takeaway for me was, how Stephanie Foster ma'am, she kind of enlightened us that, when we talk about feminist foreign policy, we're trying to move away from the traditional understanding of security in a very militarized and masculinized terms. So, security with respect to development and climate change and health, I think that was of particular interest to me because, these are research areas that I like to delve into. And other than that, the whole session, it felt very close to home because there were a lot of professors that I have taken keen interest in their work. So it was really good to listen to them. So thank you, IMPRI, and thank you, Asia Foundation, for giving all of us this opportunity to interact with these scholars and practitioners.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
This is Riva. I'm from Bihar, currently doing my PhD in Delhi, in Jawaharlal Nehru University. It was very enlightening and enriching talk overall, and I'm really grateful for organizing that. Thank you so much. I had just one feedback. I would also like, there were talks about this, but if we could have more talk about queer perspectives in the feminist foreign policy and have speakers for that, it would be really helpful about querying the whole discourse of policy. Yeah, but thank you so much for everything, especially Professor Vibhuri, for your emphasis on education and how that's where it starts. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Rupal, for talking to us. Would anyone else like to say something? We have Sabah, we have Preeti. Yeah, you're audible.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Actually, I am quite grateful to you, particularly IMPRI and the India Foundation, for organizing such a wonderful, internship program. Actually, I am working as assistant professor of political science in Jammu and Kashmir. I feel it was very much informative in the sense that we have come a long way in redefining the contours of feminism, right from that familiar distinction of public-private dichotomy to the role of women in shaping the foreign policies. It was a lot of learning experience, and I hope these programs will continue in the future. However, I also believe that it's very important for us to create the solidarities, practical solidarities at the ground with the people, from different cultural traditions. Otherwise, if we don't create those traditions, we will be, having lots of our prejudices that go in defining our thoughts when it comes to defining the important, matters of public policy or feminist foreign policy. However, at the end, I'm quite happy and I'm quite thankful to you people that you have done it in such a wonderful way. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Latif.
Thank you, Latif. Miss Unnati, Rajini, Shama.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
So this is Unnati. I'm currently doing my undergraduate in Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Tuljapur, in Bachelor of Social Sciences. So I wasn't aware, before that we had a feminist foreign policy. As I just started my undergraduate, it was a very enlightening session, and I learned so many things that to take home. That's it from me.
Thank you, Unnati. Anyone else? We're seeing Sabah Firdaus, Ashish Gupta.
May I? This is Rajni here.
Please go
Yeah.
ahead.
Good evening, Vibhuri ma'am. And Varushka, thank you for the excellent moderation. These 3 days were like eye-opener and enlightenment for us, who are like women who are stepping the area of diplomacy. And these 3 days we saw how we can look into the foreign policy through the eyes of like feminist semantics, ideology, and also the sustainable development goals. So it was really enlightening, and I look forward to attending many more seminars and summer schools at IMPRI as well as Asia Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajni. Anyone else? I'm seeing Aparna Lakshmi, I'm seeing Shifali. Okay. Thank you so much for your valuable feedback. Again, to reiterate, the feedback link is in the chat, but once again, it will be shared on your emails as well. So not to worry about that if you can't access it through the chat. And with that, I would like to move on to our closing remarks, both from Ms. Nandita Baruah and Dr. Simi Mehta.
Good evening, everyone. It has been an extraordinary 3 days listening and learning from the experts in the field of foreign policy. And it has been just very overwhelming to be with a huge cohort of scholars who are interested in feminist foreign policy from around the world. So on behalf of IMPRI, I really extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone for being interested in this, and also to Asia Foundation for supporting us and for enabling our endeavor. And so what has been transpired in the last 3 days, we have seen that feminist foreign policy framework should include an intersectional analysis and inclusion. Some of our participants also did mention it should include complete disarmament,
the security concept centered around the well-being and safety of the individual, the inclusion of civil society, the promotion of international solidarity through dialogue, and fostering of communities on the basis of empathy. So the feminist foreign policy is not just about adding women into the system, but it is about revealing how the concept of gender is incorporated into it. And given India's rise as a force to reckon with, I am very, very certain that the time is ripe for instituting a feminist foreign policy in India and for all the other nations of the global south. Let us take the lead. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. And thank you for all the closing remarks. And with that, alongside our feedback, I would now like to come to the end of day 3 of feminist foreign policy.
About Nandita ma'am, if she could.
She's not here with us anymore, unfortunately.
Oh, she just left.
Yeah.
Not an issue.
Okay. So yeah, as we come to the end of day 3 of feminist foreign policy, past, present, and future, 3-day immersive online certificate training symposium, I, Varushka Bhushan, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI and the Asia Foundation. We are grateful to our experts for the day 3 session, Professor Vibhuti Patel, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, and Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das for taking out their valuable time and allowing us to learn from this program. We thank our chair for convening on all the sessions, and we thank our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. Once again, I would like to remind our participants that the feedback forms are in the chat and they will also be shared in your email. And after you have filled the feedback form, you will have access to your certificate next week that will also be shared in your emails. So please do not worry about it. It will all be emailed to you. And with that, we would like to conclude our 3-day certification course. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. I would again like to reiterate that all of our videos and presentations made by our experts are available on YouTube if anyone would like to have continual access to them. And we hope that we continue to see you at IMPRI at the Web Policy Talks and the Web Policy Learnings. Thank you so much for joining us on this 3-day journey. Wishing you a very good day and thank you so much.
Thank you, Varushka, for conducting all 3 days session seamlessly and it's so democratically, very important. Everyone felt wanted and they felt very much included in the program and the way you conducted it.
Thank you. Thank you.